Sounds great.
All right, so we have author James Rosone talking with fellow author Brian Meeks and Amazon extraordinaire here. So how are you doing today, Brian?
I am doing just fine. I'm here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I live on the Strip, and it's kind of a ghost town right now. So it's a little strange, but you know what? We live in strange times. And
I know. I live in South Florida, and we don't have anyone at the beach, and it's 93 degrees outside. So that's a little
that's
odd, too.
unusual. Absolutely.
So if anyone's listening, you hear my munchkins in the background. They're obviously home from school, so I'm just making do with the best I can. But yeah, I've known Brian now for several years. I've read his books on understanding AMS and his ad copy books, and I'll tell you, it was a game changer for my wife and I when we first discovered the AMS piece. Because to be honest with you, we didn't know what the heck we were doing with it, like most authors. But your book was kind of an eye-opening experience, and then from there, it's just been taking what you do, make it our own, and then make it better. And that's really been the trick, And so I'm really, really glad that you've written that book and put that out there. And fair disclaimer, Brian has also written all of my book descriptions. I may be an author, but you know what? I'm too wedded to my story. I'm too wedded to the characters in the book. So I needed to have an outside perspective handle that piece. I know Mark Dawson does the same thing, and you've got to do that.
Yep, absolutely. The hardest description to write is one's own. I encourage authors, if a friend or a colleague asks for help with their description, to take the time to work on other people's descriptions, because it's a much easier description when it's not your own, when you don't know the details of the book, when you only have the information that is on their existing description that they're trying to improve. Yeah. You can come up with hooks. You can come up with ideas to give a hint at the story in a way that is easier than when you're to do it with your own book. Because like you said, if you know all the details of the book and you put all that effort into writing it, it's natural that we want to tell the world all about this wonderful thing we created. Yeah. But you don't want to do that. You don't want a synopsis. What you're going for is a hint at what might be in the book. And the key word is might. So that people reading it are intrigued, and they have to find out, how does the story go? And so that's the hard part about description writing.
It is, and I swear, if I had known that when I first started out, between having the right covers and having the right descriptions, I would be so much further along in my career than I am, and have done so much better. But I just didn't know what I didn't know.
Well, my description writing began about 3 years ago. I had a book that I needed to release, and I had done everything. I had done I'd filled out the ISBN, registered it, done all of the stuff as far as the metadata on Amazon. I filled out every box, had the cover up. It was edited, ready to go. The book was loaded. The only box I hadn't filled in was the description. And I decided, well, you know what? I hate writing descriptions, so I'll do that tomorrow. The next day, I thought, well, you know what? I'm busy today. I can launch it on Thursday. And I kept putting it off, and 60 days went by. On the 60th day, finally, the little alarm in my head was, just launch this silly book. And so I did the horrible description, and I hit launch, and I felt relieved. And then I felt shame because it was a terrible description. And having waited 60 days to put up that piece of garbage. So my good friend, Sean Platt, who's on the Self-Publishing Podcast, he was a copywriter in his life previous to being an author. And so I sent him an email. I said, Sean, I just did this terrible thing over 60 days, putting it off. Can you point me in the direction of a good book on copywriting? And he said, if you're starting out copywriting, the Bible is Joseph Sugarman's book, Adweek. And if you're going to read one book on copywriting, I recommend you read my book because it's specific to descriptions, mastering Amazon descriptions. But I got my start with Sugarman, and I always like to give him credit. and
I'm
it
writing that
changed.
down myself.
There you go. It's about print copy in the
Uh-huh.
60s and 70s. And so
Okay.
it's dated. It's about selling digital watches and things, but the concepts are good.
Yeah.
And that's where I got my start. After having read that book, when I started redoing my descriptions, because I keep all my data, I looked back at the previous 12 months. And if I had redone my descriptions on my books just 12 months earlier, the improvement in conversion rate
Yeah.
was such that I would have made $60,000 more.
I know.
Now, I'm an optimist. I don't look at that and say, oh, woe is me. I wish I'd done this earlier. My first thought was, thank God I didn't wait 5 years.
Yes.
Because I know how I am.
I know. I only lost 2 years worth of doing this until I figured out your AMS stuff. So
that's exactly right. And so, you know, we did your descriptions. It's better to do them now than 10 years from now. And so there's an old adage, the best day to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best day is today.
Yes.
And so that's kind of, that was a long story, but it gives you the idea of the importance if you're taking your author business seriously.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that it has to be properly edited. Everybody knows it needs to be a beautiful cover. You had those covers behind you are not the original covers. When we started working together, you had different covers. Those are vastly better than the covers you had originally. And so we all know about editing. If you're finishing a novel, you already know if you have the skill set to tell a story. So that's a given. But you have to have the editing. You have to have the cover. And that third sort of component is the description, because if it's a synopsis, it won't convert, and it just is costing you money. So
exactly.
I'm passionate about that.
So a lot of people know you for the AMS book you've written and your ad descriptions and different pieces and things that you've done like that. What are some other things that people generally don't know about you? Like, what did you do before you got into this? Because we all have a backstory.
Absolutely. Well, I guess my journey, because I'm an okay writer. My nonfiction books, because I use humor, have pretty good reviews. But I mean, I've read the reviews of your books. You're a better writer than me. There's a lot of folks out there who write better books, but I've been able to make a living doing this because of my background in data analytics. So many years ago, I worked for Geico, where a 15-minute call could save you 15% on your auto insurance. And I was in their marketing department. Now, I was not writing copy or working on ads or anything. I was doing analytics as it related to their marketing efforts. And so I learned the skill of data analytics in a marketing department that's just unparalleled. At the time, my boss, and I honestly, it's been a lot of years, I don't know if he's still in that position, but the vice president of marketing data analytics, he was a former, well, I guess he was still technically an actuarial fellow. And actuarial science, those are the Michael Jordans of data analytics.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, there's people that have master's degrees in statistics, but when you learn enough statistics to be an actuary, that's the top of your game. And the people that become actuarial fellows are the Michael Jordans in the actuarial world. So their level of data analytics is difficult to even comprehend. And he's the guy who taught me. So I was fortunate in that I learned from somebody that really knew his stuff. And so John made me a good data analyst. And because of that, I just naturally look at everything through the lens of analytics.
Yeah.
When people talk about, oh, I spent this much money on AMS ads, I want to know, how many clicks did you have? How many conversions? If you're in exclusive to Amazon and your books are enrolled in Kindle Unlimited, I need to know how many KU downloads you had. Now we can't look up KU downloads because that number doesn't exist. But we can take a period of time say 30 days
Yeah.
and look at the KENPC number, which is the number of pages we get paid
Give us
if
a
a
good
person
rest.
reads their book in the
Yeah.
entirety, and we can calculate the least number of possible people that downloaded the book given a long enough period of time. Now, it may be there's other people that bought the book, started it, and didn't finish it, but we still get a worst case scenario for those numbers, and we can take those downloads, add them to sales, and divide the total paid clicks by that sum, and now we have a conversion rate. And most people who have a $4.99 book enrolled in Kindle Unlimited are going to see a 1 in 30 conversion rate. It takes 30 paid clicks to get a sale. My descriptions convert at 1 in 8 to 1 in 10. And you don't need to love math to answer the question, would you rather pay for 8 or 10
Well,
clicks?
case in point, like when we changed out my book covers on my current series, and then when we redid the ad description,
Mm-hmm.
the sales took off. I mean, we're probably, good 400% increase from what it was originally. Our read through now from books 1 through 4 is an unbelievable 92%. When we put all that in through, we use reader links to really kind of help us with understanding the read through and the things like that. And
Absolutely.
I was blown away when we started using reader links because I already had a rough idea of how to estimate read through.
Mm-hmm.
But reader links really hit it home for me on there, because when you understood the read through, you were able to say, what is my true A cost? Because for the longest time, we were all under the assumption that the A cost should be around 100% or less. Or
Okay, well, not to interrupt, but just don't ever look at A costs. That's no.
Worst thing to look at.
It's the worst thing to look at. Yeah, it's inaccurate. It doesn't include page reads.
Correct.
It's just a bad man.
It doesn't.
We need to calculate. When you calculate the read through, you can then calculate a lifetime value of a customer. Correct. Meaning, for a 6-book series, your lifetime value, and I don't need to know the real number, but let's say it was $15 because that's a nice round number. Not everybody reads through, but yours at 92% is much higher. But again, just to have a number to work with, $15. If we know it's $15, and we also know that the description converts at 1 in 10, then we can divide 15 by 10 and know that our break-even point on our cost per click is $1.50. Now, you don't want to pay $1.50.
Correct.
You want to pay much less than that because that's how you make profit.
Yeah.
But that's a starting point. And so, again, we were talking about my background, and this is how I think, and everything kind of goes back to data analytics. I
love that.
Think in terms
that's so
of
critical, because authors don't understand this. They don't grasp that piece.
Well,
and it's hard.
It is hard, and we're not taught to think analytically in school. Yeah. Now, some students who go through on a STEM career path where they go to college and they're doing the sciences, if they're doing research, they may get some analytics training. They may have some statistics courses. But the general population, which, people that go on and get masters and PhDs in science, for the most part, are not the ones pursuing a career as a novelist. Correct. And so the author community does not have too many people that do data analytics. There are some. There's certainly Mal Cooper is a very solid analyst. And so it's just not a skill most people have. And it can be learned, absolutely. The authors that I talk to who have taken the time to get better at it thank me because they see the value of it. Yeah. But it isn't just the analytics from my background. Yeah. I've thought about this. Your question about what came before. I'm 53 as of a week or so ago, and I was thinking about this not too long ago, and the reason I am doing so well right now is a combination of many things. over the course of my life, what I was doing at anything in my life, whether it was in 4th or 5th grade when I would get home from school and I would watch the Brady Bunch and then Gilligan's Island, 3:30 to 4, I think was the Brady Bunch, and then 4 to 4:30 was Gilligan's Island. And then I think Hogan's Heroes was on right after that. That may have been in junior high. I don't remember. But my mom made a comment once, and she said, you watch those shows so intently, and I know you've already seen them all, because after a few years, I'd seen every Gilligan's Island 3 or 4 times.
Sure.
And I would watch it with such focus that I wouldn't hear her. I would just sit there and I was taking it all in. And after I had seen an episode of Gilligan's Island once, the next time I would watch it and I would look at what's going on in the background. And I would try to notice other details. And so I was incredibly focused. I have been that way my whole life with regards to advertising. I love TV ads. I remember when the Super Bowl, or I think it was a Super Bowl commercial, but the Coca-Cola commercial aired for Mean Joe Green with the Coke, and he gave the kid the jersey. You know, hey, Mean Joe, have a Coke. And the kid turns away, hey, kid, and he throws him the jersey. It's an iconic commercial, and I remember when it aired. And so that intense focus has led to an understanding of, as far as advertising, taglines and things like that, because I paid attention to it. But also in my life, there was a period where I taught myself to use Excel. And Microsoft Excel is, I'm going to sneeze. I apologize.
Don't worry.
Sorry, I get. Oh, sorry.
You got 3 kids in the room, so don't worry.
Anyway, every morning when I wake up, I sneeze every morning. It's something that I do. I will sneeze 3 or 4 times, so that may not be the last one.
But we're in need of some rain here because we got some serious pollen going on in Florida right now. We haven't had any rain in a month. So
yeah, it's pretty dry here in Las Vegas. But the point is, there was a period in my life where I worked at a company who processed the state of Iowa's Medicaid claims. And so every claim that would come to our office.
Yep.
And everything funneled through. This was my first job right out of college. Everything funneled through one secretary's desk. And I was that secretary. And the secretary before me, the job was, you would open the letter or the correspondence, and it would come from a doctor or hospital. And then every piece was reviewed by a nurse, and there were 4 nurses. And so you would log it. You would then assign it to one of the 4 nurses. They would review it. If they had questions on the case, they would send it back. We would then send it out to the medical professional to answer the questions.
Yep.
And it would come back, and it would be reviewed again and then approved, or sometimes it was approved right out of the gate. But on average, it took 43 days for that piece of correspondence to make it through the system for a check to get cut. And I tracked all that. Well, this was before I learned analytics, but I'm the son of a mathematician, so I believed in efficiency. I had read Ellie Goldratt's The Goal, and I knew about critical chain and project management and so forth. So I built in Excel a way to track the pieces of mail so I could see them instead of it just being on a paper log. So I did the paper log, which was my job, but I wanted to know where things were in the system. And so I built it, and so I did my timestamp, but I also timestamped it on my Excel thing so I could track it. And in a month, I went from it taking me 40 hours to do my job, so a 40-hour week. I was at work for 40 hours. I was doing actual work on what my job was about 7 hours a week. I had it so automated that 33 hours of my job was me sitting at my computer with nothing to do because I had it running like a well-oiled machine. And so I spent that time teaching myself Excel. And I learned Excel at an incredible depth. And I kept learning more things to optimize and improve this Excel workbook. Well, after 2 months, I had the average time for I think 96% of the pieces of mail were through the system to where they came in and the check was cut within 2 days.
Wow.
So I took it from 43 down to, or no, maybe it was 3 days. I think it was 3 days, 3 days on average. But I would, on some of the pieces of correspondence, if they were going to place further across the state and I knew it was going to take longer and it was a simple box that hadn't been checked, it wasn't my job. I would just get on the phone and I'd call them and say, hey, can you resend that? You forgot a single box and it will save us a lot of time on mailing it there and back. And can you just fax it? And I mean, I'm old. There were faxes.
No, I remember faxes. I used to use them too.
And so the point is 3 days. I think it was 3 days if I remember. I actually, at the time, I knew in hours because I had it, it was like maybe 73 hours. So maybe just a little over something. But I had it down to the minute from, this way out there in the 40s worth of days down to it being measured in hours with 96% of them. Now, there were some that were just simply complex cases and doctors wouldn't respond. So you couldn't get all of them, but so I did all that in 7 hours a week because I was so efficient using Excel that I had this period of my life where I was able to learn Excel and what it could do as far as just giving you information that was powerful. Well, information is what you use in data analytics. So that part of my life was important. And then I later used that at Geico. I built some stuff at Geico as far as in Excel that got me promotions because I was so good at it and I could make Excel do things that blew my bosses away and made Geico money that it got me promotions there. Well, same sort of thing. I was able to spend a lot of my time teaching myself stuff. So Excel is a huge component of my success because I can track things and know in real time what's going on. So that was another part of my life was learning Excel. There's social media. I managed for a guy out in the Maryland area. I managed his social media for a year and a half. And this was well, I had for 18 months, I made my living in the virtual world of Second Life. So that was a different part of my life where I built things in Second Life for corporate clients. I had one project. It was a $97,000 project in Second Life. It was a test thing. It was never open to the public. And learning how to build things in Second Life to where you can charge $97,000 for them taught me Photoshop. So I have a skill set with Photoshop. Now I'm not an artist, but I can do things in Photoshop if I need it to run a Facebook ad or to post something on one of my groups. I have the Photoshop skill that I learned during that period in my life. So I look back at all of the things that I can do now. So I'm working on building a course for description writing. So for authors who want to learn the skill themselves, hopefully within the next few days, I'm going to have that up. And I'm able to do that because of the Photoshop skills. I can make cards and things and I have enough design understanding to do it. Am I good enough to do my own covers? No, that's another level, but I'm good enough to do important things. So I have all these points in my life where I was paying attention and I was learning something. And so that's my background. I have a varied skill set that allows me to do different things in the book business that generate different streams of revenue. So that's a long answer.
No, it's a great answer though, because see that's what's so awesome I've seen about the indie author community is every one of us has a backstory. Every one of us has a history of what we did before we got into this. And it's that history that is what makes us good authors. That's what makes us
think so.
storytellers.
Absolutely.
And I think the authors who are in this community really excel quickly because let's be frank, there's a fair number of authors who have been in this for probably between 2 and 5 years,
Sure.
who have probably achieved more success in 2 to 5 years of doing this than some trad pub authors have done in a decade.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, we have friends that have. Well, you told me your numbers. We both know people, many people, that have done better than 99% of traditionally published authors. That's absolutely the case. And I know authors who have done exceedingly well at traditional publishing in the past.
Yeah.
And it's a different world in traditional publishing now. Authors, I have author friends who have, one in particular had in 1 week, and this was years ago, he signed 3 traditional deals. And he had signed many in the past, and I won't know his name, but he told this story at his conference, and he said, then in 1 week, I signed 3 different contracts totaling $1.2 million in advance. And that's a very good week.
Yeah.
And he said, those days are gone. I don't get contracts like that anymore. And that wasn't that long ago. That was 7 or 8 years ago.
When they controlled the market, they controlled the flow of books, and now Amazon's opened the aperture where anyone can really do it. But us indies have a unique skill set in that we are able to adapt really quickly and change and move.
Speed is key.
Yeah, and because we've had to learn how to market our own stuff on our own, we have had to become inventive and creative in how we do this.
Absolutely.
Good. Like I had to learn AMS. So I had to figure out who knew AMS that could teach me everything I need to know about it and then spend the effort to do it. And now that I've done that, I'm able to crush it and do really well. Whereas
Absolutely.
a lot of the trad pubs, they're relying solely on their trad, their agency to do it for them.
And they don't, not to keep harping on descriptions, but all their descriptions are horrible.
They are.
They're a synopsis. That's how they've done it for 50, 70 years. And I am a data analyst. I have proven that those do not convert. In fact, just in February, I rewrote my first traditional description for L. Ron Hubbard's Battlefield Earth. Now, I sent them a message last night, so I rewrote it, and it's up there as I wrote it. But then they added a bunch of stuff at the end, thus partly defeating the purpose, because one of the key components, and I've proven this with study and actual math, is that you want the description to not be heavy. When a person opens up to read more, if they see a massive page of words, they don't read it.
Right.
And so what I sent them was the top part with 2, at the bottom there were 2 quotes from, one was Neil Gaiman and the other was Brandon Sanderson. So I always tell authors, and they say, should I have social proof at the bottom? And I say no, unless it's Neil Gaiman and Brandon Sanderson, because if it's somebody like that or Stephen King or what have you, you put it at the end. I have Kevin J. Anderson wrote one for Dragon's Fury, so I use that. But most people, if it's not a household name, don't do it. Well, they added in another one of those, and then a whole 3 or 4 massive paragraphs of stuff that just isn't helpful. To a reader, none of that matters. Yeah. And so I sent them a message last night. I said, because they wrote me. They said, oh, we're so happy with how much improvement the description has had. I was like, great. And then at some point, they added in that stuff at the bottom. And so I sent them a message back, and I said, you know what? That's working against what we're trying to do. Now, they're traditional publishers, so they work a little differently. But the point is, it absolutely works. And
one of the unique things I think too is when you learn how to write the ad descriptions like that, what it kind of teaches you is how to make more descriptive or visually better sentences or
Absolutely.
short paragraphs. And if you can get good at doing that, and then you can start integrating that into your actual writing, that also improves and helps your writing as well, because you do want some wit and banter in your own writing and some more hooks. You've got to constantly.
Absolutely. Hooks are important. Now, I should say that copywriting is not prose.
Correct.
Prose is different. And so you certainly wouldn't want to write a novel entirely in the style of copywriting, but
Yep.
understanding hooks
Yes.
and beginning a chapter with a short line or two to get a person hooked.
Or even a chapter description, the chapter titles. Creating good chapter titles, creating good series names or series titles.
Absolutely.
Are also really
all
important.
that, and communicating with your fan base.
Yes.
If you write an email to your fans and you use proper copywriting, they are more likely to read it in its entirety. They're more likely to come away with a good experience.
Yep.
And if they do that, the next time that you send them something, they're more likely to open it. If
Yep.
you train them that the stuff that's coming into their email box is worth reading, they will read it, and that will improve your sales on launch day when you send them something that says, hey, because not every email is about, hey, buy my stuff.
Correct.
Some of them are just communications to let them know you're still out there working and writing books.
Yep.
But on the days when you do want them to buy, having trained them that, this is not going to be a burden to read.
Yeah.
That will serve you well. I use this on Facebook in every communication. I use proper copywriting, and my numbers of interactions from people that are my friends on Facebook or in my Facebook groups or in the 20 books to 50K group, I get astounding numbers of interactions. And it's because I use copywriting. I make posts that are entertaining, fun, but they have hooks. If you open them up, I've had my best ever was on 20 books to 50K, 488 words. 488 words is a long post on Facebook, and that had 588 comments. I'm sorry, it was 484 words, 588 comments in 4 hours before they turned the comments off. And in the first 24 hours, it had 1,600 likes and loves.
Nice.
Now, that's not typical. I typically get between 500 and 750 likes and loves on a post in that group and 300 comments. But before I started using copywriting, I would get 50 likes and loves and 12 comments. So switching from a prose style to copywriting had a 10-fold increase on the interactions. My goal is to get people to read it and get them all the way to the bottom and get those likes and loves.
Yep.
And it's because of copywriting. And so I use Facebook to practice my copywriting. And the key, people don't realize it, but if you hold down Shift and hit Enter twice, you can put in blank lines on your Facebook posts. That I tell everyone that's how you practice on Facebook. Put in those blank lines. And because I do it all the time, I'm a better copywriter, and I keep improving.
Yeah. So we know about the past Brian Meeks. We know a lot about the current Brian Meeks, but the future Brian Meeks is doing something totally radically different here soon. So your next adventure is?
I am in 3 days. I'm moving out of my place here in Las Vegas on the Las Vegas Strip, and I'm going back to Iowa for a few weeks because I have a house in Iowa and I just haven't been there in a while. So check in on the house, make sure that the guy that's going to mow the lawn is still going to do that in the spring and some of those things. But I want to travel. Now, obviously, we live in the age of COVID-19, and so
plane tickets,
I don't know how long I'm going to stay in Martell, Iowa, population 252.
Yeah.
But hopefully it's a few weeks. It may be a couple months, but I'm filled with wanderlust. I want to travel. Now, again, I don't know what the world situation is going to be like for travel, but the goal is to travel.
Having been to 50 countries around the world, I'm telling you, it's a beautiful place, and there's so much to see and do. And
Absolutely.
one thing you may
Go
want
ahead.
to
Go
look
ahead.
into, I say one thing you may want to look into, since you're looking to do a world tour, essentially. I tell people this
Sure.
all the time. I didn't discover this until I was backpacking myself through Europe, and I ran into some Australians who told me about it.
Mm-hmm.
What you can do is you can call the airlines directly. They're never going to advertise this, but if you talk to them, you can get what's called a round the world plane tickets.
Yeah, and it goes one direction. Yeah.
What you do is you buy 100,000 miles in 50 destinations, and you have 2 years to use it in.
Yep, I've heard of that. And they're like $8,000-$9,000, something like that.
Yeah, well, I'll bet you if you were to look into
it's probably
it
cheap now.
yeah. Probably half that. And there's several reasons for it. Obviously, COVID-19 is one thing. But the other big thing with the airlines that people don't see because of all the news is the price of oil. The Saudis and the Russians are in an oil war right now, and so they've put the price of oil down to $20 a barrel and possibly going lower. So what the airlines are doing, which is super smart, is Southwest is brilliant for doing this, is they buy oil futures.
Absolutely.
So a lot of them are buying oil futures now with oil at $20 a barrel. And what that's going to mean is for 3-4 years going forward, we're going to see a lot of very inexpensive flights because they will have stockpiled their multiple years worth of supply of oil at literally 70 and 80% less than it was just 9 months ago.
Absolutely, yeah.
So around the world plane ticket, you might get that for $5,000 these days.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic idea. I've considered that. There's a site, and I don't remember the name, but when I went to the 20 Books Bali in 2018 in January, one of the couples, there's a site, and I would have to ask Brittany what it's called, but it's incredibly cheap airfare, but it's really odd routes. So if I were going to Bali, I might go like Spain and then Italy and then Kyrgyzstan and then Turkmenistan and then Taiwan and then Bali. So you might have 6 things, and it might take you 2 weeks to get to your destination.
Oh, okay. Well, you could stay in all of them.
But the point is, if they flew at about a third of the cost that I did to go to Bali, and they made it a vacation. So they basically had, I think they had their 10 days in Bali, and they spent around a month traveling, and 10 was in Bali, and 20 of it was going to and from in this just route that you would never expect.
Yeah.
But each stop they would spend 3 or 4 days in a place that they had never been to, and so they were fine with that, and that works well with sort of what I want to do as far as travel the world. My one thought is when I went to Bali, I was it's a long story and I won't go into it. I've told it a bunch, but I was actually deported to South Korea. When I got to Bali, my passport had 5 months left on it, and in third world countries you need 6.
That's right, you need 6.
I now have in my handy dandy new little RFID. I have my new passport. This is my new one, and it is good for 10 years. And I got the thick version. You can get a thick one.
I did too. I got that too.
So I am good now to travel, but at the time I wasn't, and so I got there and they deported me to South Korea. It took me 3 days to get that sorted out. During that time, I stayed in a cubicle hotel. And for people that have not traveled the world, a cubicle hotel is simply you've got a bed.
Yeah, you slide in, right?
Well, some of them you slide in, and this one, it had a door, and the width of the door, it opened up, and there was a little desk with a little bench you could pull out. It had a bar with all like USB things and plugins. A little light. The light was cool. Everything about, Seoul, South Korea is on just the cutting edge of technology for everything. And so when you open the door to turn on the light, you take your key card and you slide it into this little holder, and that turns on the light. And then you close the door. And so you never lose your key card because it has to be in that spot.
A lot of places in Europe are like that too.
Yeah, and so then the door closes and you've got this little table. There's no TV or anything. The bed is, the wall, it's like 3 feet high, and so, or 3.5 feet, and you crawl under for the bed. Or if you're on the opposing room, you would crawl up over. So they're sort of stacked on each other, each with their own little thing. You've got a bathroom down the hall. You've got showers at the other end, which are just these luxurious, amazing things. And it's all you need. Now, it's in an airport. So you're, right outside. I go out and walk around the corner, and there was a 24-hour convenience store. There was a dozen restaurants. So I lived in the Incheon airport for 3 days, and it made me want to write a travel book about cubicle hotels and just travel the world. Maybe, I mean, they're not just in airports, but it would be a pretty cool theme to maybe spend 6 months living in airports and just fly from one to another and stay in the cubicle hotels. Although they're quite a bit more expensive in the airports because they don't have any competition.
Yeah, exactly.
But there are ones in Tokyo, downtown, and so forth.
How much did that cost you, by the way?
It was about $65 a night, so it wasn't cheap. But I've seen ones in Moscow for like $22, and there's ones in Tokyo in the 50s, and so they're vastly cheaper than. I mean, if you were to stay in Tokyo in a hotel, a proper hotel, you might spend $300-400 a night. So $50-60 is still a bargain. And some of them they're more like a dorm where you have, like you said, you crawl into your space.
Yeah.
The little door to shut, or maybe there's just a curtain, but then there's a common area and with tables and stuff. So it's like a big college dorm. And I would like to write books about those. It would be a great adventure. I can do that. Maybe Airbnb.
I'd say depending on the time of year you go. 3 of the countries I've been to that nobody either knows about or has even thought about going to. Montenegro is actually a really cool little country. It's probably about the size of Las Vegas County, maybe a little bigger. So it's very small. It's right on the Mediterranean. It's right below Croatia and right above Albania. Beautiful little country though, but it's right on the coast though, and so it's very pretty. You can go there and you can see that. The seafood is incredible, and it is so cheap. Everything runs on euros, but it's just really cheap. Like a friend and I, we had a beer, and I want to say it was a red snapper, and I want to say that whole thing set us back like $3.
Oh wow! Yeah, I just Googled Google Maps Montenegro, and you're right. It's between Bosnia Herzegovina and Albania, right on the Adriatic Sea, and so I think it absolutely, the pictures. You've sold me. I want to go there, and then I could go to Bosnia and Serbia and Albania and Macedonia and Kosovo and all those countries.
Kosovo is another one. I've been to Kosovo 10 times, and I'll tell you, Kosovo is an underrated country. It is really beautiful. The average age of Kosovo is about 29 or 30, so it is a very young country. There's a lot of just ancient history there.
Sounds awesome.
It's very beautiful. The food is incredible. The people are really friendly. The vast majority of them speak English. They also use the euro for currency.
And the dollar is really strong right now. So traveling is, again, once, hopefully, I mean, I get the feeling the entire world's medical scientific community are working together to solve this problem. So I have every belief in the smart people out there that they will come up with a solution. And when they do,
other country is Macedonia. Macedonia. It's home of what's his name? Alexander the Great. Mother Teresa's from Macedonia, from Skopje. It is stunning. There's not remember the name of the dam. Probably could look it up on Google, but there's a particular dam that you go visit, and there's a restaurant that's like built on the water over top of the dam, and it is just an incredibly beautiful area because it's just nestled in this big old man-made gorge that they've done for the hydroelectricity. But the
Wow.
food is great. Um, Macedonia, oddly enough, is rated the best place in Europe to get Coca-Cola, and that's because it
Oh,
has the most purest water springs in Europe.
oh,
Uh,
wow.
so it's another place that's got exceptionally great food, great people, really just a lot of neat stuff in Macedonia. And then again, you're a hop, skip, and a jump from going into either Greece, you've got Bulgaria, and you've got Serbia. So it's a essentially located area right there.
Yeah, that looks
You'd never
fantastic.
think of it though. You'd never think of Macedonia.
I wouldn't, but now that I know, and I really want to spend some time on the Amalfi Coast,
Yep.
which so I could start in Montenegro and just Kosovo, Macedonia,
Back to Greece and then
Albania,
up to
Greece,
Italy. Yeah.
yeah, and just cruise the way down, staying. I mean, I've also thought of writing a book on Airbnbs and just staying in Airbnbs, and
Yep.
because I've done a fair amount of that, and I've had different levels of quality as far as the Airbnbs,
Yeah.
but I have not had a bad host. So
True.
even the ones that had smaller, they were not as luxurious. The hosts were still delightful. So I have not had a bad experience in Airbnb. And obviously, if you do more of it, you're going to run across some. But
Sure.
I would love to write a book, and so every day do some nonfiction about my adventures and travel
Oh, here's a great
while I'm
one.
writing
For
fiction.
writing a book, this is another awesome one. Now, I don't know what this would cost, but then again, you might be able to get it cheaper because of all the virus stuff.
Uh-huh.
People are going to laugh at you for saying this, but a round the world cruise. Those
Oh,
are
I've looked at those.
they are amazing. Me and my wife are going to do that one of these days. When our kids are graduating from college, they're out of the house, we are going to go do either a 6 or a 9 month cruise, and we're going to go and hit like 50 port calls around the world, and it's just going to be amazing.
Yeah, no, I mean, that does sound fun. I like cruising. Of course, right now, the cruise ships are in bad shape because of the
Yeah.
COVID-19, and so there may be some inexpensive
Deals in the
ones.
fall,
Yeah.
get a ticket for in October or November, and then you could literally write like a chapter or something about every port call you're going into.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be neat, like a murder mystery.
The possibilities are endless, and so that's kind of what I want to do. Now, another thing that I'm interested in is, since we're talking about my future, I have a friend who runs a place in Terlingua, Texas, and Terlingua, Texas has that little dip, and then it goes down like this, and then here's the Gulf over here.
Yeah.
And so that little dip is Big Bend National Park, which is this beautiful national park. It's literally right on the border with Mexico in West Texas, and she bought a 90-acre piece of land that has a little mountain on it and has a couple Airstreams, and she's got a teepee, she's got a couple school buses, and they're all Airbnbs. So you can go live on a school bus. I went down there because I'd heard about her place. It's called 10 Valley Retro Rentals. And Rhonda is delightful. And I went down there planning to stay for 3 days. I ended up staying for 10 days on the school bus. And I mean, it doesn't have a bathroom. You use a porta potty, but it's in the middle of the desert at night. It's one of the 10 darkest places as far as lack of light pollution in the United States.
That's
so
gotta be
at night, the stars, the Milky Way is just stunning. When the moon goes down and it's just the stars, it's incredible. And so that was in end of March, beginning of April 2016. And I've thought about Terlingua every day since. It's an amazing place. It's the least populated county, Brewster County in West Texas. And I want to buy property there. I want to buy 40 to 60 acres and kind of do what she did, but instead of using Airstreams and old vintage campers and so forth, I want to learn to build rammed earth housing, which I'd never heard of rammed earth, but my good friend, my cover artist, Nico Marie, she is also an architect. And I was telling her I wanted to buy land in the desert and make stuff out of shipping containers. And she said, have you heard about rammed earth? And I had not. And if you Google it and look at pictures, it's I mean, the Great Wall of China was rammed earth. It's, you build these forms like you would if you were pouring concrete, but instead you take the earth that you've dug up on your property, if it has the right component of clay, and you mix it with 3% Portland cement, and then you pour it in like 8 inches into this mold. It's the same style for pouring concrete.
Sure.
And then you tamp it down to 5 inches. So it goes from 8 to 5. Then you put another layer. And what people do is they don't do it a consistent 8 inches. They make it wavy. And so when you get done, you have this amazing sort of mosaic. Just this, it's the most stunningly beautiful. But what's interesting about these walls, because you make them 2 to 3 feet thick, so they're massive walls,
and cool and warm. Yeah,
cool and warm. So you can build houses in the desert that have neither air conditioning or heating.
Yeah,
they take in enough sunlight, even in the January months when it's cool, and they sort of maintain a constant temperature. And then at night when the temperature drops, the walls give off the heat that they collected.
Yeah.
And so it's this amazing way of building where it's not really less expensive than building with timber.
Yeah.
But you're trading the dollars you would spend on raw materials, lumber, for the labor it takes to sort of harvest the dirt, if you will, on your land. So you dig up dirt, you have to sift it. There's a lot of stuff that has to be done. And so you trade enormous amounts of time energy for actual dollar energy. But I want to learn how to do it. I'm fascinated by it. It seems like really so much fun. And so I have this dream of homesteading a 40 to 60 acre property down near my friend in Terlingua. And when I get done of building my first tiny house, so I'm thinking something in the 200, 400 square foot range. So a very small house, so I can learn it. And then on the same property, build a little town of 5 or 6 houses.
Yeah.
And Airbnb them. And so, you know, I would just live there and build these little houses, learn how to do it, learn all the stuff. I want to learn how to do the plumbing, the electrical, and all that thing. And the great thing about Texas is that there are no laws. You can do anything you want on your property. There are no permits that you need to get. There's no zoning. You buy the land, you can do whatever you want on it. And so my vision is, because I have this creative streak, not just the writing. At my house in Iowa, I have a woodworking shop. There's something satisfying about creating stuff. I get the same rush with writing.
We just like that.
But you know, physically creating something is a similar but unique sort of rush. And building a little miniature town of tiny houses and then Airbnb-ing them, and perhaps having, you know, writer retreats where if I had, you know, 6 or 8 little houses, I could invite down a group of authors and we could do writing. And then, I mean, there's plenty to do, you know, whether it's, well, not plenty, but there's interesting things to do in Terlingua. And so that is sort of another thing on my list. And maybe I do that before the world travel. If the COVID-19 is such that traveling doesn't make sense, I could maybe start that project. And
still look into that plane ticket and just find out when you have to activate it and start using it. The clock doesn't start till it's activated. But if you maybe buy it and then you're allowed to not use it for 3 or 4 years, buying this thing for a bargain. And
absolutely. Yeah. And so
I have 3 Bambinos, man. That's what I'd be doing with my wife.
Well, that's the advantage I have is I don't have any children, so I can travel the world. And life is, I don't ever get bored. I'm interested in learning. And the last 2 nights I have been watching videos on geometry because it's been a long time since I've taken a geometry course.
Yeah.
And that skill set will help in designing these tiny houses because I want to do the design work myself. And even though it's not required by law,
Yeah.
I will take my designs and have a structural engineer go through them and make sure that
Safe.
that they're right, because the foundation you need to pour for a potentially 3-foot thick wall of earth, I mean, there's an enormous amount of weight. It's 130 pounds per square foot. And so, I mean, but my dream is to create this plan, present it to a structural engineer, and have him or her sign off on it that you did the math correctly. Because I learned that there's I'm not remembering it right off the top of my head, but Redkin, there's a formula, Redkin, and it's just for calculating the depth of the foundation. So foundations, you have to calculate the depth. Most houses are 4 inches concrete.
Yep.
But most houses don't have 60 tons of wall. And so I've taught myself that formula and want to create my own plans and get them signed off. And it's sort of a challenge. Can I, without any formal education in architecture, learn all the pieces I need to do it and do the math correctly? We'll see.
It correctly.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be really cool. But yeah,
we'll see. I may not, but I'll find out. And once I've done it once, then repeating it and making these tiny little, and they'll all be Art Deco style. I love Art Deco, and so.
So how many people have done interviews with you where they talk about this kind of stuff where it's not related to what you're known for?
1 or 2, not many. I've done 50 or 60 of these, and so we don't get into rammed earth or world travel that much. Although I mean, I have gotten into guinea pigs quite a lot because I'm known for my love of guinea pigs. I've never owned a guinea pig. Yeah. I just think they're adorable. My Facebook feed at any given time, I rarely have to scroll more than 10 posts to see one that is about a guinea pig.
I love it. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to do, because I think we often do interviews with people and we always end up talking about their books or what it is they're working on or crafting. But what we don't do a lot of is we don't do a lot of interviews of people to interview them as a person and find out more about who they are and kind of what they like and what makes them tick and what's their hopes and dreams and what do they want to do next and things like that, because you don't know the person. You know the author, but you don't know the person. And I think a lot of people want to know the person behind the books, behind those things, and kind of get an idea.
I hope my story's been interesting.
I liked it. I thought it was interesting because I never really heard, I've never heard the term ram earth. I've heard of that being done, but not that term of it. I was always
pretty neat
with like the Hobbit style of homes where you literally build them into earth.
Sure.
These rounded structures in earth or round structures, and then they surround it with earth.
I mean that's an entirely different science there. They're called earth homes, and they're called earth ships.
I like
them. If you go on YouTube and type in earth ships, they will make them. They do a lot of interesting things with recycling, where they will take tires and they'll pack them full of earth, and they just stack them.
Yep.
And tires, that same sort of thermal benefit. So there's a lot of interesting things, and I want to learn all the interesting things.
But I saw this story of this guy he bought a decommissioned nuclear silo in Arkansas.
Oh, sure.
I had no idea we had those things in Arkansas at the time, but apparently we had a bunch of them. And he was talking about that, and he did a video on how they first unburied it, and then they had to cut the door to get into it, which was quite interesting because we're talking, multiple feet of
Sure,
reinforced
sure.
steel
Yeah.
to in. And then the whole process of them basically pulling all of the water out because it had flooded. So then they had to do all
Oh,
of that. They had to excavate essentially this whole thing. And then the whole process of him building it and turning it, because actually he's in the process of turning it into like an Airbnb and a corporate
sure.
getaway meeting type facility
Yeah.
thing. It's been a fascinating project to watch on YouTube because I had no idea this thing
I
existed. And
I love those. There is a place in Colorado that is a decommissioned Titan nuclear missile uh, silos. It's actually it's $3 million, and
yeah,
it has 3 silos in it. It's absolutely, but you would have to spend,
millions.
you have to spend another million just to get. Now it's not flooded or anything. It's
Yeah.
it's but you'd have to at least use a little bit of Febreze,
Yeah.
and
Well, I came across this guy's video by complete accident. So I was
uh,
writing a scene in was a scene in book 2 of my series, and I was like, how the hell would you get into a nuclear hardened silo? So I started watching a bunch of videos on nuclear silos, and I came across his, and I saw what they did. And I reached out to him through YouTube. I said, hey, I'm an author. I'm writing a particular scene. It involves cracking into a silo, and I just watched your video, and you guys did it. Can I talk to you for like 20 minutes and ask you some questions? So he's like, sure, no problem. So I gave him a call, and I presented him the situation in the book. I said, how would you get in here? He's like, well, how would you do it? And so I told him my idea, and he says, no. So he told me specifically, this is how you use it, that you use a special type of torch that goes into the center of it, and you essentially melt a hole in the center of the door. And
oh
then
wow,
once you've melted the hole in the center of the door, then you can get inside to pop off the hinges from the inside. But he
oh
said, otherwise, you're not going to cut through. He says, you're not going to cut a straight line through this whole thing and then punch it out like that.
yeah,
You drill this like special plasma torch. It first starts and it slowly makes its way in. And then once it's all the way through, it just sits there. It superheats all the metal and starts it all to just literally liquefy and melt off until you've got this big hole created. He said, then that's how they went through it. I was like, wow, that was really impressive. But that helped me craft
yeah.
a scene that I never would have known how to do.
That's very cool. And what was the title? Which of your books?
That was in Peacekeepers, when the
Okay.
president and his group are trapped because there's Camp David and there's
Uh-huh.
Raven Rock, the 2 facilities. Beneath the 2 is a tunnel, is a tram that connects the 2 facilities.
Mhm.
So in the book we have Camp David being assaulted. So they put the president in the tram and they try to get him to Raven Rock, which is a big hardened bunker. But the
Uh-huh.
facility ends up getting blown up with some bunker buster bombs, specially designed bombs to destroy a building like that. So they're
Gotcha.
trapped in the middle now. And
I
people are trying
gotcha.
to figure out, well, are they alive and how do they get to them? And then they start, they clear away the rubble and they're pounding on the door and they pound back. They're like, okay, we know they're alive. Now,
Gotcha.
how in the hell do we get through this blast door to
And
get to them?
so you ended up with a better scene and a more accurate one
Correct.
based on that's fine. Can I ask? You know what? And actually, I have a question for when we finish this in our offline, because it's not really pertinent to what we're
Yeah.
talking about. But do you have anything else we should do? I mean, we've been talking for over an hour. I'm sure people
No,
are probably gnawing their arm to get off, or they've
we
already
should
lost
probably
interest.
stop it there so that way we can end it and do that. But I want to thank you for taking the time to talk and allowing everyone to just get to know a little bit more of the real Brian Meeks, not the author Brian Meeks.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed being here.
All right, thanks. Bye.